This video is one in a series of videos that cover database topics in 3 themes. We look at Oracle APEX, Application Express for web applications, relational database concepts for designing and building databases, and SQL, the programming language for working with a relational database. If you want to work with the video series, you can go to this URL to get the scripts and handouts. In this video, we're going to make a master detail form where we have one master, which is the animal data, a record from animals, and we have a detail region for transactions related to that animal and a detail region for activities related to that animal. So if I look at the data model here, let's look at the data dictionary. What we'll do is have the animal data in the master region and related transactions in one of the detail sections and add another region for activities. I'm going to make a copy of a master detail that we created in a previous video that shows animals and transactions, and then add to that copied page the activities. So I'm logged into APEX as one of the developers. So I'm going into the development application and I'll run the application. So we have here a master detail that starts off with an interactive grid. When we select something, let me see, I'll try Cookie, the dog named Cookie. When we select that, we get this modal form, and it's showing the animal data in the top half with the related transaction data in an interactive grid in this pop-up form. I don't want to do all of this from scratch again, so I'm going to copy page 150 and the page that it calls, page 151. So I'll go edit this page and I will make a copy. So I'm going to make this 153 and it will be animals with related records. I know I need to make that more succinct, but for now that'll do. Animals with related records. And I'll have it go ahead and create a menu item. Now 153, this copy is going to by default call 151. If I look at the columns and look at the Apex link, we see that it's calling 151. I'm not ready to change that yet. I want to now go to 151 and make a copy of that. So I'm copying 150 to 153 and 151 to 154. So I'll make a copy of this, 154, and this will be animals and data. Let's see, I don't want a menu item for that. It gets called, and I'll go ahead and make a copy. So now I come back to 153, go to the hyperlink that calls page 151, and switch that to 154. Now, I have to change the items to be set. This should be 154 animal underscore ID. So let's go to, so let me save that, run that, and we're looking at animals with related records. That's page 153. And I'll go back and look at Cookie, and it is launching page 154. So I'm going to do a couple of just kind of cosmetic edits here first. On the master region, I want to scroll down and I don't want a title. I need to make this more compact. So I'm going to go to header, visible, and say hidden. I guess I could do hidden but accessible, but I'll do hidden. And for item padding, I'm going to say slim padding. For the page as a whole, I want to change the width to 120 and I'll set a height. Let's see, actually that's not right, 1400, and I'll set a height of 1000. And I'll save that. So to open this, I would need to go to my calling page, which is 153, and launch that again. So I see this here popping up in the window. It's taking up my whole recording area. But I've removed the title that would be right above here for animal. Let me make a couple of more kind of cosmetic but fairly important edits here. I want to get fewer rows in the main master region. So I'm going to do category as start new row no, primary or dominant breed, it's start new row no. I'll move mix down to start new row yes. And then on name, I'll say start new row yes, but I'll put mix start new row no, but then move it down here to right after name. So I've got name, mix, primary, color, adult size. For chip number, start new row no, and then for estimated date of birth, start new row yes, estimated age, animal pick, start new row no. See if we can get all of that in there. And do a save. Again, I have to go back to my calling page to see the results to make this more compact. So I see all the animal information, and right now I see any related animal transaction. I'll go back to editing page 154. So what we have right now over on the left-hand side is we see the master region, which is the animal record. Maybe I should change that name to, I'll just say animal, just so it'll be perhaps a little clearer. And then we have the animal transactions, and we want animal activities. So I'm going to right-click and create another region, and this is going to be called animal activities. We can go back and forth and look at the settings here for animal transactions versus what we're going to do with animal activities. We want it to serve the same purpose. We see animal transactions is an interactive grid, so we'll change this from static content to interactive grid. Now once we've done that, we have to provide the coding to pull the data in. I'm going to paste in the code and talk about it. So this code is bringing in most of the fields from the activities table. We have activity underscore ID, the primary key field, animal underscore ID, the foreign key, activity date, description, personnel ID, which is another foreign key, category ID, subcategory ID. And this is coming from activities, but only when the animal underscore ID in this detail section or this region for the detail interactive grid has a value that equals the master. That'll be :P154 underscore animal underscore ID. You can get this by looking at the example provided in the working detail section for transactions. The item to submit is the P154 animal ID. And again, we can bounce back and forth. It gets a little confusing, but we can look at the attributes in both sections. We have one section that is already working, and we can adapt the new region so that it corresponds to those settings as appropriate. So on the server side condition, item is not null, and it's set to the P154 in the master region, P154 animal ID in the master region. So I click here, scroll down, item is not null, and then select the item, and the item is P154 underscore animal underscore ID. And we'll save that. If I expand columns and I look at trans ID, right now that's not being shown, so I'm going to put that as display only, and the heading will be trans ID because I want to see that. For trans date, we have date picker. We've dealt with trans type, client ID, personnel ID, and then again, animal ID is hidden, and I want that foreign key field to be display only. So right now I'm actually modifying the working interactive grid. So that'll be animal ID. If I look at the columns in animal activities, I guess one more thing I want to point out here, trans ID, if you scroll down, you will see that this is designated as a primary key. If you're going to add data through this interactive grid, you need to designate a primary key. So if I come down to columns and select Act ID, I'll scroll down and set it to primary key and save that. Now animal ID is a text field. I'll make that actually display only. And then we have activity date, date picker, that's fine. I'm looking from left to right. Description, text area, I'll just make that a text field. And personnel ID, that's going to be a select list. Scroll down, find the shared component setting, and then select the employee pers underscore ID list and save that. Category ID is also a select list. We created these several videos ago. So I've done the select list, scroll down and say it's a shared component, and look for activity category. It's off the recording screen here, but it should be in your list if you've worked along with me. Same thing for subcategory ID. Scroll down, shared component, and it will be the activity subcategory, and save that. So I'm not sure I have all the properties set, but let's go to our calling page, which is 153, and run that and go take a look at one of the records. So we see this information about this dog, and we're seeing animal transactions. So I'm not seeing what I want to see here. Let's go back to editing page 154. So animal transactions is an interactive grid. Animal activities is an interactive grid. If I go to the attributes, I have save set options. So I've been looking back and forth. We've got animal transaction, and the appearance is standard. But for animal activities, the appearance is interactive report. So let's switch that to standard and do a save and run this again. Got to go to my calling page and try it again. Okay, so we're getting closer. We see the animal activities. What we don't have is the ability to edit or add a row. So let's go back to editing page 154. And for animal transactions, for attributes, we see the ability to add a row, update, delete. And I also want to add the save button. So that's in the transaction interactive grid we've already had. Let's go to the attributes for the newly added interactive grid. Enable edit, yes. Add, update, delete. I would debate whether we want to do delete, but we'll go ahead and leave that in. And then we get the reset and save. It's automatically checked. So let's see if we're getting closer to what we want. Go to our calling page and run it. So now we have a save option specifically for the transactions and a save option specifically for activities. I'm going to add a row to test out the transaction. I will add a date for a transaction. Not that this has to make sense. I'll do another transfer, let's say on the 16th, and that would be client Nathan, and we'll set this for David Mercer. Let's see if this works. It says changes saved. Let's back out or close this and go back and call it again and make sure we still have those 3 transactions. So I have a bit of a problem in that I'm not trying to record an entire computer screen, and I don't want to do that. So you may or may not want to make some of these settings. In the master region, I went back to the appearance section and said remove body padding and show maximize button. And down below in advanced, remove padding for item padding. I did the same thing for the 2 detail sections. Animal transactions, remove body padding and show maximize button, and then remove padding. I did the same thing for animal activities because I'm having trouble displaying more than 1 row in the detail section or detail region for each one of these. So again, remove body padding, show maximize button, remove body padding for item padding. So now when I run this, go to the calling page, and I select the record. Then when I scroll down, I have an option here to maximize this so that I only see the related animal transactions. And when I do that, I can see my rows, and I'm going to work with it in that setting. So we've added 3 rows. We know that this section is, this detail region is working. So I can minimize or take that back to normal. And then for animal activities, let's see if this will work. When I maximize, I'm not getting rid of, I'm only hiding the other parts of the form. So if animal ID, actually we're missing something here. It should show by default the master region's number for animal ID. We see that here in animal transactions, so I know I need to make an edit. So let's go back to properties for page 154. So let's move up to 154, and we know it's working for transactions, so let's just look and see what the settings are. Animal ID is the primary key. Scroll down and look through the properties. This is identifying the underlying table and column in that table. We don't mess with that, but I think this is what we're missing. The default should be item, and it should be set to the P154 underscore animal underscore ID, which is the page item in the master region. So I will select animal ID and scroll down to default and set that to item, and then set it to P154 underscore animal underscore ID. And let's save that and go back to our calling page and run that. So I'll maximize my activities, and we're seeing that our foreign key field is being populated. Now I want to edit this row. By default we're getting this row, and I'll select a date, and the description I'll just say initial exam. The sequence here should be different, but for now I'll just test this for functionality. So I'll select somebody from personnel, and category will be medical, and subcategory, which is out to the right, we need to change the width on these. I'll put vaccination. Let's see if we can save this. So we're having a problem with Act ID, which should be generated by the trigger and sequence that we created several videos back. So I'm in the Edit Page Designer for page 154, and I'm just going back and forth between the working interactive grid and the non-working one. The primary key field, which in the working interactive grid is trans ID, is set to display only, and right now I have this set to number field. So I'll do display only, and we'll do a save and go back to our calling page. Try again on maximizing this and adding a row. and this will be 22. Then I'll click Save. And I was actually wanting to get to this error. This is an unintentional error, but I'm getting a primary key uniqueness constraint violation that has nothing to do with being able to save this record other than the number being generated for Act ID already exists in the table. I don't know how I did this, but we've got to clean it up. So I'm going to select the Application tab, and then I'm going to go to Object Browser and show you what I'm talking about. If I go to Activities and look at the data, I look through here and I see the primary key value. It starts with 33. I've got 30, 31, 32, so on and so forth, all the way up to 48. But if I go over to SQL commands and I look at the next value in that sequence, so I'll run this, and your number should not match mine because I've already checked this before I restarted the video. So we're showing 300035. Well, I already am using that sequence. If you'll bear with me, I'm going to call up the notepad screen and show you what the script was. When we created the table, you ran this script, it created activities, it created a sequence, and it started it at 330030. But again, if I go back to my object browser and look at the data, I don't actually want the sequence to start that low. That's for the existing data. I need the next value coming from the sequence to be over 48. So now what I'm going to do, and I haven't done this, I'm not sure if I've ever done this, I'm going to bump the sequence value up by altering the sequence. So I'm going to alter the sequence and increment by 100, and that should get us outside the range of existing values in the table. So I'm going to run this, and it says it was altered. Now I will come back. I can try this again, and it says changes saved. So on top of the complexity of changing all those properties inside the page, I had another error just to complicate things. So now if I close this pop-up form and go back to Cookie, then I'm seeing the transactions for that dog and I'm seeing the activities for that dog. And just for one more thing here, I can adjust these columns. I showed you how to do it by typing in values last time. This time I will adjust the columns this way, kind of like in a spreadsheet. And then I need to come to Actions, Report, and Save, and I have saved that as the default for all users. So the alternative to doing this master detail, of course, is to have two more simple master details, showing the animal record in the master region and then adding transactions and going to another master detail form if you want to add activities. In the next video, we're going to do a little bit of cleanup and organization of our pages, and we will look at a couple of additional features for the interactive grid. Because I made so many changes in Page Designer to the properties of the regions in the Master Detail 1, Detail 2, I thought I would summarize the steps as best I could here. So you can pause the video if you want to double check what you have, but we see page setting changes where I changed the dialog settings, then things that I did to the master region, which is based on the animals table. Then the changes that I made to transactions, which wasn't much since we were basically using it as a guideline for what to do with the activities detail region. And that's where I made most of the changes. So I'll see you in the next video.